Okay, here's a quick shot of the opening part of the opening sequence of the video with the animation that I want to show you how I did.
Hi, I'm Mike Colin, and the team concept is a vital part of my life.
Okay, so what I wanted to get was this bar here that opens up, comes on the screen, flickers, and then scrolls open, and Mike starts his talk. This little part right here at the beginning, and you can see how that opens up, and then right at the end, before I get to that part, it's going to scroll down, and he's going to fade out, and then that bar is going to close up. So let me jump over here to After Effects and just show you the graphic that I created. Now, what I was going after was something that looked kind of Sports Center like. So if I can find it here, I just Googled some examples and kind of liked the way that this one looked like. Zooming in a little bit here. Sort of like that, and wanted to kind of like had those things at the end, and so mine's nowhere near as cool as anything that these guys can do, but it's an attempt. So I created each of the elements in different layers. So these two guys are the two end caps. As it came together, I had to have this little middle piece here, so I just called that pin, and then that's my bar. I turn that on and off. So those are the four groups of this Illustrator graphic that I created. And I'll show you how to do that in another video for anybody who's interested in that. And so here's the groups, and when I import those into After Effects, all the different groups come in. Now, what I did is here's my bar, and I took the other three pieces and created this pre-comp, or its own composition, so I could animate just these three pieces and get the thing to appear together, to wait for 1 second, then split apart, and you see that middle piece, which I just had as a placeholder. It fades away, but that opens up. It stays open all the way till the end of Mike's talk, and then comes back together, waits a couple of frames, and then goes out in the video. So what I think, one of the things I really like about After Effects, I'm just learning how to do is create compositions and then put them in other compositions. And for me, somebody who's a lot better at it than I am can probably do it all in one composition. But for me, taking these pieces and putting them into bite-sized chunks and animating them, and then putting them into another composition and then animating that whole composition as a whole, helps me to do this in stages. And since I'm really just kind of learning how this whole After Effects thing works, doing it in pieces like that's a lot easier for me. So here's the composition in which I have those three pieces. They're right here. And see, now that's just one composition which I can apply some animation to, which is what I did here with the flicker thing, and we'll talk about that in a sec. And then I left the bar here for a couple of reasons. One is I wanted to do some specific animation on that by having a light sweep go around it. You may or may not have been able to see that in the video, but then I put the text on top of that, and I could sequence the text and get that little magnification effect. And then here's the video with the key light green screen piece applied to that. So you could see that if I where is that? If I were to turn that off, I might not be able to turn it off. Probably can't, but filmed in front of a green screen. So anyway, I like that key light effect, by the way. That's pretty easy to use if you're just learning how to figure this stuff out. So let me talk about first the bar animation. Again, somebody who's a lot better than me could probably do all this together, and there might be a much easier way to do it. So I'd love to get a comment on the blog if anybody knows a better way to do it. But I animated the scale of this bar such that it matched up with the opening of the end caps. And so that comes on like that, and you can see the scale changing, and it doesn't match up perfectly. I think actually after I finished the video, I got in here and messed around with it a little bit more, and so you can see a little piece of the bar to the right. But I did that using this keyframe piece and um, just animating the scale of. So if I expand that out a little bit and click on these guys, by tweaking these little handles and just flipping through things frame by frame. This wasn't a long. This was just only about 10 frames of animation, so I could just tweak the way that animation worked a little bit by grabbing that and changing the parameter value at each frame so that it did what I wanted it to do. So there, I got that a little bit better matched up. It's a little bit off right there. So that was the only thing here that was real time consuming, and it wasn't all that time consuming. I did this whole thing in probably about 20-30 minutes, and keep in mind I didn't have a clue how any of this worked before I got into it, so it's very learnable. So anyhow, that's how I animated that opening bar, and I want to also show how I did this flicker effect. So I'm going to turn that off. Shrink my thing down. I'm doing that by hitting the plus and minus, which I found out was a keyboard shortcut, which has made some of this really easy. So I wanted it to have that little flicker on effect there because I thought that looked kind of like ESPN-ish, and then open up. So the way that I did that was I searched for a flicker on effect and found a couple of posts on using expressions to do this. And so I created an expression for the opacity parameter. And in figuring out how to do any of this stuff, really what it boils down to is figuring out the right questions to Google, because if you can figure out the right question to ask, you can find the answer to just about anything when it comes to working with After Effects. So I found this, and you can get the link to it on the Creative Cow forum with some great explanation of what this does. But here's the expression, and basically what it says is if the time on the timeline is in between is greater than 1 second but less than 22.1 seconds, and you need to read that blog post that I referenced, or that URL that I referenced in my blog post to get a little bit of an explanation how to come up with those decimal points. It's probably more than I can explain, trying to keep this short. But in between a second and 22.1, return a value, a opacity value of 100. So that means you can see the bar, or these guys, excuse me. Or else, if it's within the first second or after 22.1, then generate a random number um, between 0 and 1. And if that number is less than 0.5, return a value of 0. And if it's greater than 0.5, return a value of 100. So in the first second, for each frame, the expression is going to kick off a random number, which is going to translate to either 100% opacity or 0% opacity, which gives that flicker on effect during the first few frames, actually the first, I guess, 30 frames in this video. So that's how I got that flicker on and flicker off effect. Now, subsequently, I read about another method of doing that, which seems pretty cool, but you have to read that in my blog post. So that's how I got that animated. And then there you can kind of see, as I scroll back and forth, that little light sweep effect there, which I thought added just a little bit of life to the text. And I also sequenced the text as I started this up. So you can just see I used for the bar this CC light sweep, and so I just keyframed the direction, and so that just makes that light sweep go around, and I bumped up the edge intensity a little bit so you can kind of see it on the edges of the bar, and just had that go over the bar. I did that because I wanted to keep the light sweep specific to the bar, not going over those two little end caps. Again, that's why I created this pre-comp and left this one out here. I could have just as easily done it all in that pre-comp, but again, it's easier for me learning this to create parts of the graphic and then put them all together. And so that's how I did the bar graphic, the opening scroll effect, and oh, and I didn't show you the sequence animation. That's just a preset for the text, and let's see if I can find it right here, animator, and I just found that coming over here to text, what do I call it, magnify, and text tracking magnify. So that's the parameter right there, and that will get you. Um, you can modify the offset um, to get the um, the the little sequencing magnification that you want. So you just play around with the offset, and that's how I did that. So I hope again, I'm sure there's other ways to do it, and I'd love to get some comments on the blog if anybody knows of a faster or easier or already preset way of doing any of this. But this is how I did it, and I hope it helps you.